This is Power Athlete Radio. With your hosts, Denny K, Professor Booty, and the Luke Summers. And now, toes forward, hips locked, shoulders set, and retract those scapulars. It's time for some knowledge bombs.
Power Athlete Nation. Welcome to episode 52 of Power Athlete Radio. We have a special guest with us, the guest. So we had to kind of change up the format a little bit and step outside of the box. We apologize for any audio issues, but I think it's going to be all right. Before that, though, let me get to my fellow co-hosts, Luke Summers, Steve Platek, and John Wellborn. How we doing, guys?
What's going on?
We're good.
What's up, Denny?
How we sound? Sounding good?
Yeah, it sounds like a phone call, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Sounds like a phone call.
What are these things? I haven't used a cell phone since this morning.
Crazy. Crazy. But like I said, we got the powers of Asgard, right? The guest of all guests, Mark Rippetoe. How you doing, sir?
I'm fine, and I'm not on a cell phone. I've still got a landline, so.
Well, you're pretty much the only one I know.
If it sounds unusually clear, then I apologize.
Rip, is your phone? Do you have like a wireless phone at least, or is it still one of those rotary phones?
No, I have the ability to walk around the gym with the phone. I can carry it anywhere I want to within a certain radius. I mean, it gets me to the bathroom and back. That's about all I need.
Yeah.
The second office.
Yeah.
That's all of his best work he's done.
Yeah.
All right, so the guys hit me up and asked me what we were going to talk about today, and just a little bit of history. Obviously, if you guys are listening to this, you guys are familiar with Mark Rippetoe and the work that he's done out of Wichita Falls Athletic Club and starting strength. And, if you've done any research on the internet that has to do with lifting weights, at some point you'll stumble across Mark's work with starting strength and also his forums. Mark and I met a number of years ago and have stayed pretty close friends. I'll probably, go every couple of weeks and either give him a call or he'll give me a call and end up bullshitting about endless topics about strength training to life and, meat. I'm sitting here at the office and I'm looking at my favorite gift that Rip gave me, which is the River Cottage Meat Book, which completely changed a lot of my perception on cooking and meat and was a huge deal. So not only have...
That is a hell of a good book, isn't it? In fact, I just killed 5 steers about a month and a half ago off my plate, and we're in the process of cutting up the last one right now, and there's some pretty decent meat out of the whole deal.
So, Rip, what's your favorite cut of meat?
Sirloin.
No question.
I say that immediately. I've taken apart, at this point, probably 15 cattle from nose to butthole, and if you look at all of the meat coming off of one side and eat it in order, then you'll develop an understanding that there is a different flavor in the ribeye, the T-bone, and the sirloin off the same animal. And we have proven over and over again that really the sirloin is the best tasting meat on the animal. The filet, the tenderloin, that's for the wives.
That is a true statement.
That's the wives portion. The best meat on the animal, most flavors in the tenderloin, the sirloin, that whole area in the hip.
Well, I always love the T-bone. I mean, I love the porterhouse, which is the New York strip on one side, and maybe give you a little bit of filet. But I remember that.
Yeah, it's the same thing as a T-bone. It's just a little bit further down the lumbar.
Yeah, I remember that.
But that is a good steak. There is no doubt about it. But if you're going to sit down in a restaurant and buy a steak, I always get a porterhouse. But a good sirloin from that same animal will flavor than either piece of the porterhouse.
Now,
So that's just completely extra information that really no one is interested in, but John and I like to talk about food. So.
Well, we do. We talk about lifting weights and eating food, which is really all that exists in life.
I mean, what else?
Well, I don't know what there is. I mean,
I don't know. I've pretty much wraps it up as far as I'm concerned.
Or your other favorite one is all these people that write books but don't write their books. That's another pet peeve of Rip's. Everybody comes up with a book, but nobody writes the book.
Ghostwriters.
Yeah, ghostwriters.
Ghostwriters. Yeah, we don't use those. In fact, we do all our own final edits. We don't even send that out. Every book we produce it here in the house, and I don't have a lot of respect for people who can't write their own material. So, gosh, I don't know who
we would probably hate half of
the what?
I was gonna say, it seems like half of modern entertainment, none of those guys are even writing any of their own material.
Oh no, it's too much trouble to actually sit down and work. I mean, if you could just put your name real big and then with whatever the other guy's name is at the bottom, with wrote the book. Yeah, with means he wrote the book.
But you get to reap all the benefits. You don't have to do any of the work.
It's easy. Just give topics to make it happen. So, something that Rip and I have been talking quite a bit about, we had a great conversation the other day, is this kind of the observation that I made over the course of my NFL career, and I know Rip's made this observation working with athletes and different lifters, that difference between somebody who is weight room strong and field strong, and obviously, Rip growing up in Texas, living on a farm and kind of working and, being around guys that work on the oil fields and, cattle and, these kind of farm deals. Really, I remember we started talking about training and conditioning. I remember Rip always referred to field work and that type of hard, heavy kind of lifting that you really only develop lifting hard and awkward implements. And there was this kind of, and we've talked about the seminar, we've talked about it a million times. I mean, I've written about it on my blog that there's a physical strength that you develop training and doing things outside of the weight room, and that there's only while the weights are great, they're not awkward, they're easy to lift, and relatively to other things. And that idea of field strength versus weight room strength, and really how you work on developing big, strong athletes. And you can go back and look at the world's strongest man, old competitions, and guys like Kaz, who were extremely weight room strong, but yet were extremely strong in the world's strongest man. But then you send Kaz out to go play for the Green Bay Packers, and the guy wasn't able to do the job. So we've been kind of talking a little bit about it. I've been working and doing a bunch of research for an article for Rip on it, so I figured we'd talk a little bit about it today.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I've worked with guys all my life that were apparently not strong, but in fact were really strong. Horseshoers and guys that work with their hands. We're familiar with guys like that. They have what sometimes gets called dad strength, right? And, good ball players, good athletes on the field, seem to have a type of, I don't know if it's a different type of strength, but I've been thinking about this since John and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago on the phone. I don't know that it's a different type of strength, because obviously force production is force production, but it is the ability to produce a huge amount of force in a very short amount of time, whatever the situation requires. And I think that really what it boils down to is that it's the ability to disinhibit your hands and feet in order to apply strength, even though it might get you hurt. I've watched horseshoers get jerked around under a big 1,200-pound horse and fight the damn thing back long enough to get a shoe on. I mean, it's just that's hand strength. Now, what could the guy curl? I don't know. But can the guy chin himself, 80 times? Probably not. What does he bench press? What does he squat? What does he deadlift? He probably doesn't train. But when it comes time to actually apply what strength he's got, he's very good at applying all of the force necessary to get the task done. And I think that probably is the same thing that happens on the field. A guy knows how hard he has to hit you, and he does it. And it may be that he's applying a greater percentage of his absolute strength than another guy who's weight room strong. But his neuromuscular system is capable of applying all of it, a great percentage of it, even though that effort constitutes a huge amount of his absolute ability. But he can do it over and over again because his central nervous system's actually willing to recruit that stuff. It's willing to recruit it right now in odd positions, in positions that are awkward to apply the strength. And, if we can agree on that, then the question becomes, what does that guy do if we put 300 pounds on his squat?
Or does he have a faster adaptation?
He gets real scary,
Or does he adapt faster because he's already kind of built up these neuromuscular pathways is really, for the listeners and the people that we work with, is how do we take some of that physiology for that individual and translate it in and make a complete training style? I mean, that was really the goal for our power. Yeah,
that's a real good question, and you know far more about that than I do. How do you take a weight room strong guy and convert him into a field strong guy?
Well,
I don't know, John. I wish I did. That's an interesting topic, and I hope that's what you're writing this article about.
Yeah, that's the premise of the article. And yeah. I had a good chat yesterday with Rafael Ruiz on another podcast. Rafael trained me my first 6 years in the NFL and is a super sharp strength coach. And guys would come train with us. I mean, at one point, I think in my fourth and fifth year training with him, we had probably anywhere from 12 to 20 guys, consistently NFL players from, in the Tampa, Orlando, St. Pete Beach. I mean, that whole surrounding area would come train with us every day. And it was pretty amazing, not only to see the guys that were, starters, good players, and kind of see the guys that were, weight room strong and field strong. And the thing that we always really noticed is that the guys that were good players, that had good field strength, they could play, always had good flexibility, and were just, the comment that we laughed about yesterday is the guys that didn't have it, we just called stiff. So that was kind of something we always kind of laughed about. That guy's just stiff. That guy moves. He looks stiff when he does everything. The other guys could bend and move and were flexible, that were able to, somehow.
They were able to apply that strength from awkward positions on the field. In other words, they weren't just strong in the optimum position. They were strong in every position, and they were able to get into every position because they were strong there.
Yeah.
A man that's not strong won't go into a position he can't use. We see this all the time training old people. If you'll let me do a little excursion to the side here.
Hey, this is all about you.
When we train old people, a lot of times what we find is that old people are apparently unable to get into the bottom of, say, a squat. Most commonly a squat, and inexperienced coaches might see that and say, oh, we need flexibility work. Well, I think we've proven conclusively over and over again that flexibility has nothing to do with the bottom of the squat position. Hamstring flexibility has nothing to do with the bottom of the squat position. Nothing whatsoever, because the length of the hamstring doesn't change going from the top to the bottom of the squat. What does change is a person's ability to handle his body weight at the bottom of the squat. And if an older guy is just not strong enough to do that, then he's not going to permit himself to go into that position. It's not flexibility, it's strength. You won't put your body in a position that you don't have the strength to get out of. And we see this in old people, and I think it needs to be kept in mind that when you're training old people, you're dealing with people who are typically not strong enough to use the full range of motion of most of these exercises. And it's not a matter of flexibility. It's a matter of you having the right equipment to train these people. Take that analysis and apply it to the field, and I think your observation about seeing people that are stiff is easy to understand. It's not that they're stiff. That's what they appear to be, but they will not use positions in which they are not strong. And a guy who has only developed his strength in the weight room has developed his strength with the most ergonomically friendly device in the world for lifting weights, and that's a barbell. And if you're not good at applying strength in non-mechanically efficient positions that the barbell does permit, then you're going to look stiff on the field, sure, because you're not field strong. You're not able to apply your absolute ability to produce force in awkward positions because why? That's really the question. Probably because you've never done it before. Probably because as a kid you didn't get used to putting yourself in those positions and applying force. And again, if you find yourself in a position that you're not able to apply force in, you're not going to go there. You're going to stay out of that position and you're going to look stiff. And as a result, on the field, you're going to be slow and inefficient and not a good player.
There's a doctor out of Utah, a guy named Craig Bueller, that I've worked with, and I found him late in my NFL career, unfortunately. And I went and saw this doc because he does something known as muscle activation technique, and he was able to assess my body and find, due to certain injuries, different muscles had shut down, and then the guy's able to work and do some manipulations to actually get the muscles to fire again. It was very enlightening and almost scary when he started putting me into different positions. And as he was putting me into the position to challenge, to test the muscle, as I was getting there, I was like, whoa. And he's like, what? I'm like, I don't like that position. That's not a good position for me. And he'd laugh and he's like, well, that's because that muscle isn't firing. And he made a really cool observation, having worked with, dozens, if not hundreds of NFL players, professional baseball, Olympic athletes. I mean, he works with all the Winter Games because he's up in Salt Lake City. He said that the difference between the good athletes and the greatest athletes in the world, and he was a doctor for the Utah Jazz for 29 years and worked with, Karl Malone and John Paxson and these guys. He made this observation that the best athletes in the world, the reason they're the best is because every athlete gets injured, that the best athletes have the ability to recruit, and their body has a certain intelligence to be able to find a way to pull and recruit around injuries and muscles that have shut down. So, for example, he's like, I can bring in an athlete who's playing at a high level and test him and find out that the guy has, of the 100 muscles I've tested, 25 or 30 of them not firing. And he goes, for most people, if you turned off 30% of the muscles of their body firing, they couldn't get out of bed. But he's like, these athletes are able to find a way, either it's through patterning, recruiting, different mechanics, different movements, find a way to be successful at their job with these kind of, without their muscles firing. I think of the 200 muscles he tested on me, something like 140 were shut down. And I walked in there thinking my whole life was coming to an end. And the hilarious part is, as he started working on me and putting me in these different positions and kind of helping me kind of rebalance some stuff, I remember walking in and starting to go train and actually move and actually feeling like I did years ago before a lot of these injuries had broken me down. And it was just kind of a real fascinating deal. And I remember really thinking about that and realizing that, every athlete's going to get injured, just the nature of training. The guys that are able to constantly recruit, and his deal, he really called it this physical intelligence. That's what makes the good ones and the great ones, and he noticed this with a lot of NBA players. So it was kind of a really cool observation that, you're kind of getting back to that here's a situation, like you said, old people and different lifters, maybe those guys never trained in those ranges of motion. They never did these type of, movements, so that they, that appearance of being stiff is just the fact that they're not strong in different planes of motion.
Well, I agree with that, but every time I hear about muscles not firing, quote unquote, not firing, quote unquote, my bullshit detector just goes all the way up to 10. Okay, and I'll tell you why. In the absence of neurological damage, a muscle is receiving motor neuron signal and it's turning on. Now, the damn thing may be weak. It may have been injured at one time, and you may have learned a movement pattern around it, but that doesn't mean it's not, quote, firing, unquote. Now, I got kind of a little minor shitstorm started on T-Nation last year with an article about all of this not firing bullshit, not firing glutes, not firing hamstrings, all this. But and then I pointed out that in the absence of a neurological deficit, the muscle is going to fire based on the movement pattern you're using it in. Now, you may alter the movement pattern, but the muscle turns on and contracts because that's what muscles do. If you ask the hip to extend, then the muscles that extend the hip contract it. Unless you've got MS or nerve damage, then the muscle's contracting. Now, you may have learned how to do that movement as a knee-dominant exercise, but that doesn't mean that the muscles aren't firing. And anytime I hear aren't firing, I just, shake my head. It's a fad nowadays. It's a fad. Muscles fire. And when I backed a couple of these people into the corner about this, they started saying, well, it's not that they're not actually firing. It's just that they're not strong.
Well,
and I said, I have no doubt that 10 years of getting the shit kicked out of you in the NFL got you injured. And when you have to play injured, you learn ways to move that don't involve using the injury. But I don't so in terms of the macro explanation, I'm in complete agreement. But if we get down to the fine mechanism, it's not that your muscles are not firing. It's that you chose not to use them in a particular movement pattern. You can alter a movement pattern.
Well, if you think about it,
but you're not altering the innervation pattern of the muscles through any other mechanism by that, except that you alter the movement pattern.
Well, if in form of let's say you injure a joint or you injure something, the body and the muscle will actually stop firing to injure that. So
I don't believe that.
Oh, I do, 100%.
You're going to have a hard time convincing me that in the absence of an actual neurological mechanism for the non-transmission of the nerve signal, that you have a muscle that is turned off.
I'm telling you.
If you remember 3.5 years ago, I ruptured my Achilles tendon.
Yes.
This year, within the past 3 months, the medial head of my gastroc has just started firing again. And the reason, and this is a stark difference between what I'm saying and what you're saying. The damn thing wasn't firing. It wouldn't contract. But the nerve is growing back. And I'll eventually probably have, partial use of the medial head of the gastroc again, but that's been quite a thing I've had to rehab. But there's an actual neurological explanation for that. The nerve was severed in the rupture. And maybe by my surgeon in the repair, who knows?
Well, it's just like, when Dr. Bueller worked with me, my quad, I had a similar deal with a ruptured patellar tendon, tore the retinaculum, the surgery severed the nerve, and I still don't have feeling on the outside of my knee, and I still can't get my quad to contract the same way it did before the injury.
The numbness in the skin is not necessarily indication of anything going on with the motor, because those are all superficial nerves, and those get, hell, I've got a numb spot on the knee I had operated on in '94. doesn't mean the quad underneath it is not innervated. There's two different sources of innervation. And if they severed, and they may well have done that, may have severed the thing. And sometimes I think these guys don't pay much attention to the neurology of the situation when they're doing an orthopedic repair. And if that's the case, yeah, quad may not have extended, may not have fired. But in the absence of such an explanation, it's very hard to see that a nerve impulse would not make the muscle contract, and I've never heard an explanation down at the histology level of that phenomenon. It's just what we do nowadays is he's not firing. We've got to do special exercises to turn that back on, and these special exercises. I think that if you squat with correct form, then all the muscles that are working in the squat fired.
Sure, but you're talking about...
And I'd like to know why they would.
You're talking about healthy, normal individuals. I believe when you put people in extreme trauma, like playing in the NFL or some of these other major deals, and you have some large blunt force trauma, I think that muscles in different parts of the body will shut down to prevent damage.
The blunt force trauma, I'll buy that, John.
Yeah.
I'll buy that. Hell, I've watched football. I know what blunt force trauma looks like on TV. I'm certain that things happen. But this explanation is being applied to just guys, off the street. Oh, your glutes are asleep.
Yeah, well, we're not talking about those fucking monkeys. No, Rip, you're talking about guys who, are like, oh, my glutes don't fire, so because I sit on my ass too much. Well, there's probably a good chance you're just not strong. Like, really,
that's all bullshit.
Yeah, what we're talking about is, athletes like
world-class.
Yeah, like world-class athletes. Like, I think.
Who actually get hurt. No, I'm completely willing to buy that sometimes there are neurological mechanisms. Sometimes also, when you get hurt, when you hurt a muscle, you alter your movement pattern so that you don't hurt it when you run. Sure. And an altered movement pattern means that you're not using that muscle as in its normal component function of the movement pattern.
Well, but
it's because of the altered movement pattern, not because of the neurology.
Well, that's like what Dr. Buehler was talking about, that if you have enough of these blunt force traumas and the body stops, using and kind of, finds different ways to, get things to fire. And the analogy I like is, water always finds its level. It always will find downhill. Eventually you'll find a way, but at what cost? And he's like, I've worked with so many athletes that have been so damaged. Last time I was in there was a girl who just competed in Sochi, a snowboarder, and she does the big half pipe, and she had taken a couple pretty violent falls, and from landing on her face, a bunch of the muscles in her neck and her shoulder had pretty much just shut down. She couldn't turn her head, and he'd gone in there and kind of rebalanced her and worked with her to kind of rehab the stuff back. And she had been all of a sudden hadn't been able to really do a lot of kind of that violent kind of 360 720 movements to one side, and then ended up working with her and she was fine. But he's like, there wouldn't really be much of a need for me if she wasn't going at 40 miles an hour and landing on large hard ice packs. He goes, that type of blunt force trauma similar to football is really where we're seeing a lot of these athletes kind of run into these problems. So I think once again, people look at some top tier athletes and then they kind of start trying to extrapolate things back, and you're like, dude, unless your job involves 3 hours of another 300-pound man trying to kill you every Sunday, I don't know if you're going to necessarily have the same injuries.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I just think that the fad nowadays is to explain an inability to move in a certain way by saying muscles aren't firing. And furthermore, I would make the observation that if a person doesn't know how to coach the movement that they're trying to get you to do, maybe that's a better explanation for why you can't do it right.
Shitty coaches.
So we go back to shitty.
It's like this functional movement screen. I think that's just bizarre. Evaluate a person's capacity to do a movement that you have not coached them to do, and then draw conclusions about corrective exercise based on that. I think the only conclusion that can be drawn is uncoached movement is not going to look good usually. And sometimes it's harder to coach the movement pattern than the guy's prepared to do. But I don't think that merits corrective exercise. I think it merits the guy learning how to coach.
So the first time I did the functional movement pattern or the functional movement screen, I failed. And I was not happy about it.
And you know, that should have told you something about your NFL career. I mean, good God, John, how's a man playing in the NFL going to fail a functional movement screen? Maybe you need corrective exercise in order to continue playing in the NFL.
Well, what I did is...
Christ Jesus. I mean, that's just...
After I failed, I took 10 minutes and practiced the movements and had them put me through.
And then you did them right, didn't you? Yeah, isn't that crazy?
So the guy...
I know, that's kind of a pet peeve of mine.
Well, I went over and practiced
recently. I see that thing get applied in a lot of instances where, you know, look, instead of sending your health club people to the functional movement screen thing, why don't you send them somewhere and get them taught how to coach correctly? Maybe that'd be more productive if you learn how to coach a squat. You know, then if you sit around and try to explain ways why this guy that you haven't coached to squat can't squat. He can't squat because you haven't showed him how. That's why. And I suggest that maybe people should learn to be better coaches.
And how would they do that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that.
The internet?
Well, you know, we teach these things. John teaches these things. You can learn how to coach movement patterns. Mm-hmm. I know it's not as much fun as learning how to administer tests, but I'm of the opinion that if you learn how to coach movement patterns, that while you're coaching the movement pattern, you can evaluate the athlete in terms of where the deficit is in the movement pattern. Then you correct the deficit, and lo and behold, the muscles that do that part of the movement pattern get stronger. They don't turn on, they get stronger. Correct movement must be coached, and special exercises don't alter that fact. And
so do you
I sound harsh? I probably sound harsh, don't I?
Well, I mean, you know.
Gosh, I'm sorry, but you know,
people, I've
been doing this a long time. I've been doing this for 37 years, and
kind and gentle are words I would never associate with you, even though I do think you're a big softy and a big sweetie.
Don't tell people that shit. No.
But I think I might be the only one. Everybody thinks I grip so hard. I'm like, really? I think Rip's a sweetheart. I love him. He's always been real great to me. So you know.
Well, it's because you're so big.
Oh, you are.
You're so big. You just command my respect because of your imposing physical stature.
Oh, thank you. You're so kind. I don't think anybody ever gets to see this side of you.
Well, let's just keep that between ourselves. I don't want everybody to know where I donate money and stuff.
So another big question that we get, and I'm sure you have probably 7,000 threads with millions of pages about the novice effect, this amateur progression. And I was hoping to talk a little bit about it just because it's an observation that you made, and I was always under the impression that it was something that maybe Bill Starr had made an observation of, and that you had kind of, something, because I know you worked with Bill, so when we were wrapping a little bit before we started recording, you actually told me that that is not something that Bill Starr observed, and that was something that you kind of observed. And then I remember when we started really discussing this, I went back and read a bunch of physiology and found a really cool passage in some of Zadaskorsky's and Perkashansky's work about, unadapted nervous systems, and really looked at putting some science behind it, and found that, an unadapted nervous system is the reason that this thing works is because because it's an unadapted nervous system, and that they, the inter and the intramuscular coordination, and, went back and just analyzed a bunch of the physiology. And even more than that, we've used the linear progression with our amateurs for the last 5 years. I mean, it was, I know people find this hard to believe, but we've had beginners put 200 pounds on a squat in 20 weeks. And
easily.
So
easily. People that find that hard to believe have just never done it. We do it all the time. You take a kid that walks to the gym squatting 135. If you're not coach enough to get him to 335 in 4 months, then you need to step out of the way and let somebody else do this, because we do it all the time. It's not unusual. It's not weird. It's just normal for a normal-sized individual to be able to get strong that fast. If they're not getting strong that fast, it's the coach's fault. It's not the fault of the specimen. So, to back up, when I first started training with Bill a long time ago, I have to tell you that observation was never made to me. And I think it's one of these things that he just assumed everybody knew. When in fact they don't know that. And if you have been in the gym business as long as I have, and watch what people do when they come in the gym in the absence of guidance. They don't know that. They have no idea that. It seems perfectly obvious to you and me that when you first start with a kid, you find out how much he can squat the same day that you're teaching him how to do it. You take him up to where it's kind of heavy, but where he's still good, under the bar, where his movement pattern is perfect, where his movement pattern is correct, whatever lightweight that might be. And your experienced eye tells you that any more than that weight on his back today would turn the movement pattern into something less than 100%. And then it seems perfectly obvious to you and me that the next time he comes in the gym, he goes up 10 pounds. And the next time after that, another 10 pounds. And then the math just kicks in. And as long as he can go up 10 pounds, he goes up 10 pounds, and then he goes to 5 pounds. Every time adding 5 pounds to the work sets on his squat, once again, with complete, perfect technique, so that all of the muscles that make the movement pattern occur receive their anatomically directed share of the stress, so that they adapt in their anatomically predetermined percentage of the effort, so that each muscle group participates in the movement at a little bit higher level every time, the whole system working at the same time, until that process is no longer possible. And that process works anywhere from 4 to 6 to 7, maybe even 8 months in certain circumstances. And that seems perfectly obvious to us. But the fact of the matter is Bill didn't write that down anywhere. And he never told me. I learned that the hard way from running a gym. When I bought Wichita Falls Athletic Club, it was Anderson's gym in 1980. David Anderson started in 1980. I bought it in 84. From the day I started the gym, I showed everybody that signed up in the gym how to squat, bench press, and deadlift. And then I showed them how to power clean. And over the years of doing that, I solidified this idea in my mind because I was keeping notes. I kept notes. I wrote all their workouts down. And if you write down 8 workouts across a page, and the squat goes up every single time, that does an interesting thing. It catches the eye. We being pattern recognition animals, we recognize the pattern. I see the pattern repeated for hundreds and hundreds of people over dozens of years. And the inescapable conclusion that you come to is if you force the adaptation will occur. If you wait for the adaptation to occur by itself, you'll still be waiting. Everybody that we've made go up on the squat went up on the squat. they got stronger because we didn't give them the option of staying at the same amount of force production, because every time they come in the door, we went up 5 pounds a day. 5 pounds more, 5 pounds more. And yeah, if you can't put 200 pounds on a kid's squat in 4 or 5 months, you're just not much of a coach. And anybody that accuses that effect of being the fault of steroids is just you're not only are you impugning everybody's integrity that knows how to coach, you're just being a pussy yourself. You're saying that, well, anybody stronger than me must be on steroids, because that's the general rule of thumb, right? This is not a function of steroids. It's a function of human physiology. It adapts. If you're a young male, you can adapt. Your physiology will adapt, but it won't adapt unless you make it adapt. And many, many coaches for many, many years have failed to see this simple linear pattern as being necessary to success in the weight room. Just think, John, think of what we have done here. You and I, who have taken a whole bunch of novice athletes and shoved them down the road toward a productive career that they would not have had otherwise had we not had the ability to show them what to do to get strong enough to actually play on the field and maybe get a scholarship and maybe continue a sports career and get something accomplished that they wouldn't have been able to accomplish. And it's not that the process is complicated to understand. In fact, the fact that it's simple is kind of something that I think a lot of people don't like.
Well, we've known this for years, is that the more complex something is, the better it looks. Like, everybody looks at it like,
sells, doesn't it?
It
sells. The functional movement screen sells because it looks complicated.
Well, I mean, think about it.
The more complicated things are, the more money they're worth. And the more money they're worth, the more money you make.
Well,
so, and I hate to be cynical, but I really think that a lot of this stuff, that this headed in the complex direction with strength and conditioning, is just a job assurance program for these guys that really don't know how to train the simple way. You squat, you bench press, you deadlift, you press the bar over your head, you learn to snatch and clean and jerk, you add weight to all of those things, and over a relatively short period of time, the athlete gets better. Well, duh. Why do we need to have him do Bulgarian split squat? What the hell is the purpose of that? You know, I know they're easier to coach, but I'm sorry. If you don't know how to coach, learn. Well, and, you know, it really gets kind of frustrating when I see the industry that you and I are working in being manipulated in the obviously commercial direction for no apparent reason other than the fact that complexity is proprietary.
Yeah.
Complexity sells. Well, people don't want to hear us talk about, it's simple. You just squat and you go up.
Well, it's not sexy. What's sexy is undulating periodization and all these other things.
Oh, yeah.
This, and you're going to periodize.
Undulating periodization is certainly romantic. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you look at all these programs and all this, reps and sets and volume, and you look at this whole stuff, it looks sexy. And you know what? You can sell sexy. The problem is hard work where you got to come in and do fives, triples, singles, doubles. You got to do a little bit of conditioning work. I mean, we talk about this all the time, and we have people come in and, I just want to look good. I just want to look good naked. Great. Well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to let you lift some heavy weights, so we're going to build some muscle. We're going to make you do some work so you lose maybe a little bit of body fat. We're going to get you to eat some real food, so stop fucking sucking down your soy latte macchiato twice a day from Starbucks. And we're going to get you to eat some sad fat because, the U.S. government hates it and thinks that, but it's really not. And then
as a general rule, anything the U.S. hates, you probably need to be doing.
Yeah, it's like saturated fat and guns. It's
right. All that shit. You need to do all that.
Yeah. We've got into this, and we see it in CrossFit football land. I mean, we see it with our, the power athlete stuff. Is And even when I get up and I present this, and long ago when I started, I first got approached about doing CrossFit football. I contacted Rip about, I hadn't been an amateur in so long or a beginner that I needed to understand the do's and don'ts and really understand it. Having gone to Rip's seminar, I was just fascinated by this linear progression, and the reason that I was fascinated by it was because I did not get the opportunity to do it the way that I saw it written out. We actually did a different deal.
And John, I didn't either. And I look back on my lifting from the early 80s on, and I think, if I only had known then what I know now. Now, how many of us have said
Jesus
what
Christ.
You know how much time I wasted in the 220-pound weight class when I should have gone to 242?
Well, think about
the reason I wasn't worth a shit as a power lifter is I got some bad advice about what weight class I needed to be in.
Well, dude, we tried to do a linear progression with singles. Right, and what do we know about singles? You got to have a highly adapted central nervous system to efficiently lift a single.
Right, it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. That's why people are like, well, can I do your linear progression with singles? And I'm like, no. You have to use it with. We've tested it with 4s, we've tested with 5s, we've tested with 6 and 7s, and we found that a rep range in that 4 to 7 works well, but nothing works better than 5s, and that's why we use 5s.
5s are the deal, man. The further away you get from your 5s, the further away you get from your base of strength.
Well, and
that's simple. I know that's painfully simple, and I know that it would be much sexier to do mat bed. And in fact, it's a whole lot sexier if only the strength coach knows how to do that for you. And specialized knowledge is required. Well, the fact of the matter is, 5s work.
We had
squats, bench presses, deadlifts, presses work.
We had
cleans and snatches work. And I don't know what the hell you need to do anything else for besides chin. Chin's work too. You need just chin.
Rip, we have one of our.
Other than that, that's about all you do. Advanced. The most effective way to spend time in the weight room is not to spend it doing different exercises. It is to spend it matching your level of training advancement to volume, intensity, and rest on those basic exercises. The more advanced you are, the more complex the relationship. But it always is based on 5s. For everybody, it's based on 5s. There's more manipulation required the more advanced you get, but the more sidetracked you get into doing assistance exercises and special exercises and everything that's not the basic movement patterns with a little bit more weight next time that is a sidetrack that people end up going down. A lot of people don't learn that it's wrong, but that's just. Here I am in 2014. I'm an old, beat-up man. Now, I can't do it. My productive ability to go in the weight room and actually train instead of just exercise is gone. But in the process of having made all these mistakes, I think we've written some pretty good things down that properly applied will help everybody avoid the mistakes that I did. And that's what I've tried to do. It's too late for me, but it's not too late for most of you guys listening to this broadcast. Just stay with simple stuff. Just try to get stronger, eat a lot, get big, get strong, get fast, use your feet, move. Let John's advice in terms of how to apply this stuff to sports guide you in terms of the application of strength, but just acquire the strength in simple, basic ways, and enjoy a long, productive career because of that.
Dude, that was awesome.
Rip, it seems to be like just from my experience and more of like a CrossFit environment. I'm getting people coming in who maybe watch the games. They want to do, what they see on TV, and they haven't put in the years of of just even like bodybuilding, just basic, you know, you got some isolation movements. Even when my program was more of like what looked like a bodybuilding template, I still benched, I still squatted, and I still deadlifted. You know, we did military press. I mean, when those people come into me and they want to do all these things, but they haven't put in the years of just basic barbell work, it's like I almost don't know what to tell them. Well, because it's like I want to say, you know what? You need a couple years of basic lifting,
right?
And they want to tell them
this. Of all of the types of physical adaptation that we can obtain, strength, power, accuracy, precision, you know the list. Endurance, stamina, all that shit. Strength is the most basic adaptation that you can obtain. Strength is the basis of all of the rest of them. And if strength training, if strength acquisition is not made the priority, especially early in an athlete's career, then he is watering down his potential to get better. Strength, in fact, we don't even let our novice athletes do any conditioning for the first 4 or 5 months because their work capacity is going to go up anyway, whether they condition or not, just by virtue of the fact that they're getting stronger. Their work capacity increases. And we've seen that so many times in military applications. You know, a guy that's required to do a 2-mile run test or something like that doesn't do any running, trains for strength for 5 days or 5 months, goes out, takes the run test, cold turkey, and his time's down. It happens all the time. I mean, the jury's not out on that. We already know you don't need to do any conditioning at first. Later, it becomes critical, but at first, you just have to get strong. And I understand why CrossFit people don't want to do that. They want to flail around in the air on the chin-up bar. They want to do hundreds of stuff because they want to participate. They want to be in the community. Had they the discipline to just not do that shit at first and just get strong, then their participation in all those types of random fitness activities later would be at a much higher level. But of course, we, you know, are stuck in this situation where we have to pretend that random exposures to a variety of different stresses actually constitutes training, and it doesn't.
Now, Rip, have you successfully
hard distraction.
Rip, have you successfully changed anyone's perspective that's been from, let's say, the random approach to training and work capacity, threshold training, whatever you want to call it? Have you taken anybody that's been kind of deep in that CrossFit thing, pull them out, and just put them under a barbell for a year, and then let them retest and realize that?
Sure. Have you not read my board?
I haven't been on it.
Hey, I was going to say, like, I remember
Johnny
like
Payne.
Mousy.
Wasn't Johnny Payne
right?
your apprentice for this?
Who's this?
Johnny Schaefer.
Yeah, he started with us. He kind of converted over to a more strength-based protocol, and did pretty well, if I remember. He's not had complimentary things to say about me of late, but nonetheless,
are you guys feuding?
Since you brought it up, it's your fault, not mine. Okay.
Are you guys feuding or something? I don't know. I'm out of touch, but is he mad?
Hey, look, shithead, come in here and force me to say nasty things about people on the web. My God, I try to stay away from that. I already bashed the functional movement screen people for 10 minutes. Is that not enough? Do you not already have that scalp? Do you want more blood? More blood? Is that what you want?
Well, I mean, Jillian, what's Jillian Mosley? I mean, she was a big CrossFit.
Yeah, I was going to. I mean, I've read her article.
Jillian Muncy. Jillian is an absolute amazing athlete. She stopped doing random bullshit 2 or 3 years ago and has become one of the best raw power lifters in the world. She's been invited to the Raw event in Australia in November with Brandon Lilly and Caroline Green is going, and our guy Jordan Feigenbaum's going down there, and she's doing really well. Billy does well at anything she does.
Brandon Lilly hurt himself pretty good.
Yeah, I talked to Brandon at the Arnold. That guy was 10 days post-op, and he was out there walking around. He was from a complete knee rupture, a complete absolute derangement on one side and most of the other side. He was walking around in the Arnold that day. He and I sat and talked a couple hours.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He's an impressive guy. He's an impressive athlete, incredibly tough, talented guy. We've just started to see what he can do.
Yeah, I was. And he's a crazy person.
Blaine Sumner was there too. Blaine Sumner squatted 848 in a belt and a singlet on Friday, and on Saturday competed in the equipped meet and opened with 1,008. So he squatted 848 on Friday, and then he squatted 1,008 on Saturday. And that guy, he's just getting started too. He's an amazing powerlifter. He's an amazing lifter. And there's a lot of good people. Mike Touchere's doing a great job. Mike was there, deadlifted 818 on Friday in the raw meet, and I'm really enjoying getting back involved with raw powerlifting and that aspect of the sport that I grew up in. And in fact, we got if you go to my website, we got an interview up just last night of Joe with Joe Ladnier. John, you may remember Joe. He was a great lifter back in the early 80s. I know that Zangus helped him with some equipment, and I know knew George. And, those guys used his equipment, and he's a great connection to that time in powerlifting also. He's just 50 right now.
When George passed
away, did a 555 triple bench in a tank top.
Jesus.
About a month and a half ago.
I was going to tell you, when George passed away, we were at the funeral, and his daughter came over to me and said, I still got a bunch of trophies, and we found all these old boxes of all, his training logs and all this information that he had. And I hit her up and was like, I'll come pick it up right now. She's like, well, yeah, let me call you. We're cleaning some stuff out. I'll call you. And I was like, I'd love to have all of his old training stuff and the training logs, and, I'd love to just go back and see all that history. I know a bunch of people would be really excited to go through it.
Oh, yeah. What a treasure of data.
And called her up, hit her on Facebook, and they threw it all away.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
man.
Didn't call me, and I got hit up by the guys out of York Barbell. Had done a search on George and found some stuff I'd written on him and reached out to me. And I've been hit up at least once a month I'll get somebody emailing me about, what kind of programs did Zangus and those guys follow? What did Cass do? What was that Thompson Powerlifting team like?
These people that aren't involved in this don't really understand the loss. That's tragic.
I was pretty tragic because, all I have is just what's in my head and, the memories and kind of some stuff that he'd written me and, some letters. But for the most part, this is pre-email. I think George would fax me things, I think how long ago it was, or have to send me stuff handwritten on yellow pads. But, I was pretty crushed to think that all that, all his training logs and all that information and just a lot of the, the period, the way that he kind of set it all up was lost. So I was I said to her, I was like, I'll drive over and pick it up. Tell me where it is. I'll come right now. I'll dig through it. I'll find it. I didn't need that stuff.
She just didn't want to fool with it.
Yeah.
And that's terrible.
Yeah,
she doesn't know what she's done.
Yeah, had his old belts and a lot of the old gear, and I even said to her, I'm like, I'll come take all of his equipment, I'll take all the gear, he had one the original.
I'll get it out of your way.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't. Poor thing didn't understand.
Yeah, it's just maybe it was tough, or I don't know what it was, but they just pitched it out, and I was pretty broken up about it. But I just got an email the other day asking for somebody if I could help them understand a little bit of of that kind of old time programming, and I just shot the guy an email hey, based on this is what I saw and this is what we did, and these are the pillars of what we worked on, and it was kind of, it was sad. I figured you'd be sad on that one like I was.
Yeah, that's not good.
So
not good. We're trying to write all this down. I'm going to have Joe back out, and here probably in the fall, talk to him some more. I'd like to just debrief him for about a year.
Yeah.
Because he was there. He was there in the middle of all of this, and he was a great lifter. He's still a great lifter. And guys like that, we need to learn this advanced programming stuff from them. I think we have better ways now to start novices than they did back then because, again, they just hadn't collated the data. I think we're pretty good at doing novice and intermediate programming, but when you get up into the advanced levels of the sport, those are the guys we need to know this stuff. Right? How did they do that? And what did they depend? What variables did they manipulate? How did they do it? That sort of thing. It's important to get that all down. And we just take it in little bites. Do it a little bit at a time, best we can do.
Well, cool, Rip. Hey, that's about an hour, so I think we're about good. But, that was awesome.
Well, I enjoyed it, John. You call me anytime, man.
Well, of course. Well, I'll definitely follow up. We'll wrap a little bit more, and I always enjoy our conversations and our friendship, so thank you.
Great. Anytime, John.
Yes, sir.
Always good to talk to you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, other guys. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks a lot, Rip. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Rip. That was awesome.
All right, see you, boys.
Bye.